Good evening. Welcome to Kent County Levy Court. This is our combined meeting of our regular business meeting and the committee meetings. Tonight, we're in the Levy Court chambers. It's Tuesday, August 9th, 2022. And before we really officially open the meeting, I'll turn it over to the county administrator to explain how people can join us through WebEx or call us online. Call us.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the President has indicated, this meeting is being shared via the internet through the WebEx platform. We have guests who may be joining us via WebEx, and if we do have folks who are going to participate in the meeting through WebEx, there are points along the way in the meeting where there are public comments or opportunities to ask questions. And we ask that you keep your devices on mute until such time as we invite public comment. And if you wish to address Levy Court and you're on a mobile phone, you can press *3, and that will raise an electronic hand. We'll be able to recognize you and bring you into the meeting room. If you're on a computer, there's an icon at the bottom of the WebEx screen that looks like a hand, and you can activate or deactivate that to let us know that you're ready to address Levy Court, and we'll bring you into the meeting room that way. If your comments are during the first public hearing item, we ask that you state your name and address for the record and be sworn in by the county attorney before proceeding with any comments. We'll repeat these as need be throughout the meeting to remind people how to participate remotely. And as an official proceeding of the Levy Court, we're proceeding under the adopted rules of procedure for business meetings and committee meetings, as well as the Mason's Rules of Order. Mr. President, back to you.
Thank you. Now we'll officially bring the meeting to order, and I'll ask Commissioner Howe to lead us in invocation, Commissioner Buxton to lead us in Pledge of Allegiance, and move in silence for our troops and first responder, Commissioner Sweeney. All rise, please.
Heavenly Father, we acknowledge your presence tonight and ask you to guide us in all of our proceedings. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence to honor our military, law enforcement, firefighters, paramedics, and other first responders who have lost their lives in the line of duty, protecting and fighting for our freedoms. We also honor all first responders and medical staff who have succumbed to COVID-19 virus complications contracted through close interaction with infected patients, losing their lives caring for others. Please remember these individuals who died in the line of duty. Keep their families in your thoughts and prayers as they deal with the loss of their loved ones. Police Officer Daniel Vasquez from the North Kansas City Police Department, Missouri. Sergeant Christopher Nelson from the Edmond Police Department, Oklahoma. Police Officer Anthony Mazurkowitz from the Rochester Police Department, New York. Deputy Sheriff Matthew Yates from Clark County Sheriff's Office in Ohio. Sergeant Gene Harold Astry from the Fairburn Police Department, Georgia. Mounted Deputy Nicole Schuff from the Clare County Sheriff's Department in Michigan. Deputy Sheriff Lorenzo Bustos from the Smith County Sheriff's Office in Texas. Deputy Sheriff 2, Jamie Reynolds from the Spalding County Sheriff's Office in Georgia. Police Officer Noah Chavanez from the Elwood Police Department in Indiana. Sergeant Matthew Fishman from the Wayne County Sheriff's Office in North Carolina. Special Police Officer Morica Mannion from the D.C. Public Library Office of Public Safety. Deputy Sheriff Andrew Peary from the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, Colorado. K-9 Frankie from the Massachusetts State Police. K-9 Max from Lake Wales Police Department in Florida. K-9 Blue from the Niceville Police Department in Florida. Rescue Specialist Matthew King from the Bernalillo County Fire and Rescue, New Mexico. Rescue Specialist King was the third fire rescue and sheriff killed in a fire and rescue helicopter crash. Firefighter pilot Thomas Hayes from the Rotac Helicopter Service in Post Falls, Idaho. Firefighter pilot Jared Bird from the Rotac Helicopter Services in Anchorage, Alaska. Firefighter trainee Bryant McGowan from the Huntsville Fire and Rescue, Alabama. firefighter Dan Pattison from the Spokane Valley Fire Department in Washington. Everybody I listed here was killed providing safety for those of us who live here in the United States. Please keep them in your thoughts and prayers, and their families as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sweeney. Give me a roll call to determine quorum, please, Mr. Naka.
Mr. Angel?
Present.
Mr. Buxton?
Present.
Mr. Hall?
Present.
Mr. Howell?
Here.
Mrs. Maston?
Present.
Mr. Sweeney?
Here.
Mr. Pepper?
Here.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 present.
Thank you. As you may have noticed, Commissioner Hall is joining us via the phone or WebEx, I'm not sure which, but he's saving us all tonight. He doesn't feel well, and he doesn't want to pass it down the line. So thank you, Commissioner Hall. Need a motion on the adoption of this evening's agenda.
So moved, Mr. President.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Angel, second by Commissioner Howe. We have roll call, please.
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. And if you'll notice on the agenda, there are several minutes. We have the corrected minutes of January 25th, the minutes of May 24th, the minutes of June 14th, and the minutes of June 28th, and also the minutes of July 12th. I trust that you've all had the opportunity to review those, and unless you have any corrections, I'll take a motion to approve all of them.
Move to approve the list of minutes as displayed on the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Sweeney, second by Commissioner Maston. Anybody have any questions? I don't see any. Can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. All the minutes that I listed earlier have been approved by Levy Court. Mr. Quayle, do we have any introductions this evening?
Mr. President, we do have 3 new employees joined the county last month, and 2 are here to be introduced tonight, and that honor goes to Chief Colin Faulkner, Director of Public Safety. Chief?
Good evening, Commissioners. We're fortunate tonight to have two new employees that come to us with considerable experience. The first one I'd like to introduce is Heather Brown. She started her position as the Dispatcher 1 in the Emergency Communications Division on July 18th. Most recently, she worked as a dispatcher at Mid-Atlantic Care. Prior to that, she worked as a 911 operator for Newcastle County. She also has experience as an EMT for Woodstown EMS. Heather currently resides in Newcastle County. And the second employee is with our paramedic department. He started his position on July 18th. Most recently, he worked as a paramedic for both Longwood and Boothwyn Fire Companies in Pennsylvania. Prior to that, he worked as an interim EMS educator program director for the All-State Career School in Essington, Pennsylvania. Michael resides in Commissioner Angel's and President Pepper's district. Thank you. If you'd like to make a comment.
Hi. I appreciate the opportunity for working for Kent County, so thank you.
Hi, how you guys doing? I appreciate the opportunity to work for the county that I work in, or live in, excuse me. I've always tried to do that, and I want to continue that from here on out. So thank you for the opportunity to work for you guys.
Thank you, both of you. We're glad you're working here, and we hope you have long careers here.
As do I.
You're joining the Kent County family of employees, and we're happy to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, this time we'll open the public hearings on ordinance LC 22-14, which is solar moratorium revised. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was tabled at our last meeting, but the public hearing was not closed, is that correct? So we need to lift the ordinance LC 22 from the table, and we'll continue with public hearings.
Mr. President, I'll go ahead and lift ordinance LC 22-14, solar moratorium, and revisit on the table.
Okay, then that doesn't require a vote, correct?
Needs to be a motion and a second and a vote, yeah.
Okay,
Second.
that's for a motion, and second by Commissioner Howe. Motion by Commissioner Angel, second by Commissioner Howe to lift from the table. Now we do need roll call.
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Roll call reveals ordinance LC 22-14 has been lifted from the table. At this time, we'll continue with the public hearing on ordinance to amend Kent County Code Volume 1, Chapter 158, moratoriums. And we'll ask anyone who is in the audience to please come forward and at this time to testify in favor. Anyone in favor of this ordinance, please come forward.
Sorry, they confused me.
Hello, welcome back.
Hello. You need my name and address.
Yes.
Tricia Nash, 3652 Big Woods Road, Smyrna, Delaware.
Ms. Nash, do you swear or affirm tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I just want to say we're in favor of this moratorium. We appreciate the work the county's done. We'd like to see it. We'd like to see the ordinance get wrapped up and have this off the table for the rest of us so we don't have to keep kind of watching the agendas and showing up. But I think it's important that we preserve the Ag Conservation District and the Ag Residential District from utility scale solar development. I think it's important that we're responsible with community solar development, and I think that it's up to the county to mandate that, as they do everything else for land use in Kent County, Delaware. I actually went back and watched the public hearing from July where this was brought up the first time because I missed it on the agenda, and during that I noticed that Snake Creek was one of the big topics that night, the dirt track park. And it kind of caught me as funny because it's in an AR district and it's a dirt bike park that I've known about for years because my son dirt track raced. And people were opposed to a motorcycle track being in an ag residential area. It doesn't fit the character. So they wanted them to rezone it to industrial, but that doesn't fit the area. And that opens up this big chasm of what if someone from industry comes in and buys up that land and wants to put a factory in or wants to put something else in that doesn't fit the character of the area. So the Levy Court didn't allow the zoning change. And to me, utility scale solar is the exact same thing. Utility scale solar is an industrial use of agricultural land. It's that plain, it's that simple. I'd much rather listen to motorcycles, even though I listened to all of the testimony from that night, then I would look at utility scale solar. And I think our kids need things to do. So if you saw fit to vote that down, I think that you can see fit to stop utility scale solar from going in ag conservation and ag residential districts in Kent County. So thank you.
Thank you. Any commissioners have any questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Yep.
Good to see you. Anyone else in favor of the moratorium, please come forward. Welcome back, Mr. Nichols. Please be sworn in, please.
My name is John Nichols. I live in Clayton, Delaware, 970 Winnow Drive.
Mr. Nichols, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, sir?
So help me God.
Thank you.
Kent County Levy Court, the primary goal is to make wise public policy. Mrs. Nash spoke very eloquently about the need to protect valuable agricultural lands. I won't repeat those points. I'm going to look at this from a broader perspective. So I wrote a few notes so I could get all my thoughts organized tonight. I want to state that no empirical data exists to support the hypothesis anthropogenic greenhouse gases contribute to global warming. Anthropogenic means man-caused. The 1930s were far hotter than today. Unadjusted temperature data for the last 100 years indicates a slight cooling trend in the United States. Recognize that the reason we're told we have to build solar panels and erect wind turbines is to save the planet from catastrophic global warming. That's really the reason we're here this evening. Sea level rise is often mentioned. It's occurred since the end of the last ice age, approximately 21,000 years ago. Based on tide gauges, there is no measurable acceleration of sea level rise. In Delaware, half of the sea level rise is due to coastal subsidence, which has nothing to do with carbon dioxide. Any actions taken by Kent County Levy Court to reduce man-caused CO2 emissions will have no impact on global CO2 emissions. In fact, CO2 emissions in the United States could drop to zero, and global CO2 emissions would continue to rise, primarily due to emissions generated by communist China. Now, these are factors you need to take into account. You may think they're irrelevant, but these are public policy issues that you need to weigh in making wise land use decisions. Alternative energy from wind and solar is unreliable. A recent study, an integrated resource plan conducted looking at the New England grid, determined that in order to have a grid that was 100% so-called renewable with wind, solar, and battery backup, instead of the normal 20% additional capacity that's needed to manage extreme weather events in the New England grid, they would need 300% of the capacity. Let me say that again, 300%. The cost for that is astronomical. Alternative energy is inherently unreliable. It has to be backed up with reliable natural gas, coal, nuclear energy, or risk catastrophic failure of the grid.
Mr. Nichols, can I interrupt you, please? We're here tonight to determine whether or not we want to
lift the moratorium.
Have the moratorium.
Extend the moratorium.
And we don't need all the background information.
Well, I'm trying to give you the information to help you extend the moratorium, not just to the end of the month, which I believe is when it expires, but permanently. The state of Delaware has enacted legislation that is designed to eliminate the fossil fuel use in Delaware. That's going to have dramatic by 2050. Right now, 90% of Delaware's electricity comes from natural gas. Where are we going to get the electricity if fossil fuels are eliminated? Rational public policy should focus on reliable generation, not unreliable intermittent wind and solar. So I'm here to ask that the moratorium be extended, that it not be lifted, and understand that the solar interests, more than 70% of their capital costs are subsidized. There's a lot of money to be made. Now with the recent enactment of legislation in DC, they're going to be clamoring to have more and more solar because they can make more and more money. Understand now that PJM has put a moratorium on any new connections to the grid. I believe it's almost 2 years. It may be 2 years. So even if they're in the queue, they're not going to get a permit because they have so many already lined up and there's not enough reliable generation. So to the point of Kent County, why would you want to lift the moratorium when the purveyors can't even get a permit to connect to the grid? Lastly, my last point, I mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it again. There's a 400 megawatt coal-fired generator, the one remaining coal-fired generator in the state in Millsboro. Last year it was dispatched 20 hours. 20 hours. The reason it was only dispatched 20 hours is because it was displaced by wind and solar. Not replaced, displaced. The owner, NRG, wants to shut that generator down. PJM, which runs the grid in this region, said you can't because it would risk catastrophic failure of the grid. In order to stay open, NRG wants money, and they were granted money. How much money? We all in Delaware are paying $100 million more for electricity delivery in Delaware to NRG to keep that plant open for 20 hours that would not have to be paid if we didn't have these intermittent resources. Now, for the next 5 years, they're going to get $100 million a year. Now, that's split up between Delmarva Power ratepayers, DMEC ratepayers, and the co-op, each paying a proportionate share based upon their utilization by their customers. So Delmarva would be paying the most, obviously. Why would you want to grant permits that's going to cause more and more economic hardship for Delawareans? Why would you want to grant permits for land use matters where you get very little from it? We spoke at an earlier meeting about the Dover Sun Park, so-called Sun Park, 10 megawatts, 10 megawatts on 100 acres. Over 325 megawatts, I believe, or 345 megawatts, 325 from a combined cycle natural gas plant right next to it, and that's on 145 acres. I mean, just strictly from a land use perspective, which is your purview, one would think that you would say this is not a wise use of land. So I urge you to...
Mr. Nichols, you are in favor of the moratorium?
I am in favor of extending
moratorium.
the moratorium
Thank you.
in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we got the point.
Did you?
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? I don't see any.
Thank
you, sir.
I appreciate it.
Anyone else here in favor of extending the solar moratorium? Anyone in favor? Anyone in the audience that is opposed to extending the solar moratorium, please come forward. Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed?
Mr. President, we'll check on WebEx to see if we have any guests who wish to address Levy Court on this matter. If you're on a mobile phone, *3 will raise your hand and let us know to bring you in, or you can activate the raise hand icon.
Okay, Dustin Thompson, you can unmute your line, state your name and address for the record, and you'll be sworn and affirmed by our attorney.
Hey, yes, Dustin Thompson. I am the staff at the Sierra Club Delaware chapter and live in Wilmington, Delaware.
Mr. Thompson, do you swear or affirm, sir, to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Not here necessarily to speak in opposition. I don't have a copy of this proposed ordinance or the one to come around community solar to know exactly the fine details, but did hear some of the earlier comments and was curious on whether this was for the whole county or for the AR and AC zoning only. If it is for those two in particular, and not for the whole county, just wanted to know that clarifying comment. But again, not inherently opposed to here to speak in opposition of the bill on its face at this time.
Mr. Pepper.
Yes, Mr. Buxton.
Mr. Thompson, you might benefit from the questions that I was going to ask staff, and then maybe you can chime back in if that's okay, and I think it'll get to your answer. Ms. Kiefer, if you wouldn't mind coming up, I have a couple things. Could you explain to the folks listening, including myself, currently in regards to utility, based on the ordinances that we did officially adopt, where we currently are in regards to utility in the county?
Utility is permitted inside the growth zone in the AC, AR, and I believe IG zoning districts. In AR, outside the growth zone, it is prohibited in AC, outside the growth zone.
Gotcha. We currently have some draft ordinances which regards to utility do what? If they were passed.
The most recent drafts eliminate utility scale solar within the AC and AR zoning districts. Those have not been finalized, but
Inside and outside of the growth zone?
I believe so, yes.
Right. Okay. And those drafts, test your memory, when was the original ordinance? May, something like
March.
that?
The original ordinance was March.
March. Since that time, we've had meetings, and we've had meetings, and we've had discussions, and we've had discussions about amending those ordinances to get a final clean version. And we're moving into September in another month, and we still haven't got there. Is that, obviously, that's where we are. The answer, obviously, is yes. In regards to community, the moratorium does what?
The moratorium does not address community solar at all.
Thank you. Right. And again, some of the answers, do I know? Yes. Do maybe the public? Yeah, we've been here this long. What is the holdup? Because my only problem with this whole thing is moratoriums, they don't make anybody look good. They are effective. They're not designed to make you look good. They're designed to push the pause so that we can recapture what's going on and then get back in the game and let things move, right? My concern, as I vote to approve this, is that we shouldn't be here right now. In my opinion, the moratorium should not be necessary. We should have already vetted these issues and brought this forth in some type of a vote. So that's my hope. We're going to put a Band-Aid on this thing and move it to, when does the moratorium, when will it end if we adopt this thing tonight?
September 8th.
September 8th. So if we don't light a fire underneath this thing, we're going to be doing what September 8th? Well, I'll answer for you. We're going to be right back here again, extending the moratorium. And that can't happen. This is a festering wound that we have got to get rid of. So I'm going to motion, or I'm not motioning, I'm going to fall in line with a deliberate hope that we are going to get after it. If Mr. Nichols and the others who are working on the ordinance actively want to outright ban utility, let's bring that forward. If you want to ban it specifically outside the growth zone in all areas, let's bring that forward. But let's bring something forward, because this wound needs to, to heal up, is what I will tell you.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, are you still on the line?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Does that clear anything up for you?
That did clear up a lot. If I could just make one final comment.
Sure.
Thank you. So just as final thought, to the point made earlier, PJM has put a 2-year moratorium so they can get through the queue that they currently have. And it's my understanding that you all would likely have already seen anything impacting Kent in that queue process, going through the land use process and concurrency with that. So I don't necessarily agree that a moratorium's necessary. We're more or less neutral on this particular ordinance because of the movement at PJM. We don't feel this really have any impact one way or the other on the utility solar projects that you have not already seen. We don't believe there will be any. However, just to the comments just made, I don't think the balance is properly struck between property rights and ag conservation and just wholesale banning utility throughout the entire county. I don't know if it's economically the right move to just limit it to within the growth zone. I think that may backfire on you in the future. So there's just kind of some comments on what was just said. But one final thought for the record, PJM was on a meeting last Friday, and it's $70 million, which is still absolutely ridiculous that we're paying $70 million to keep a coal plant sitting there doing nothing. However, it has nothing to do with wind or solar. There's only 2 wind facilities online currently, and they're in far north of the PJM territory. It doesn't have anything to do with intermittent power. It's simply a measure of capacity. And that plant, it's just, as I said earlier, there's a buffer necessary. And so that plant kind of provides that buffer until additional gas sites that are in the works come online. But again, just wanted to set the record straight on that.
Thank you, sir. Mark, do we have anybody else online that wants to testify either for or against?
I see no other hands raised online in opposition or in favor at this time.
Thank you. Unless any commissioners have any further comments, I'm going to close. Commissioner Sweeney.
Thanks. Ms. Kiefer? So how many applications have we received for solar facilities in the past 3 months?
Community or utility?
Okay.
Both. None for utility. 10 or 12 for community?
Which are not impacted by this moratorium.
Correct.
If we extend it. The Kent Economic Development Office, Linda Parkowski, testified during one of our meetings recently on solar that we are limited in areas inside the growth zone where we could put solar on either IL or IG. And I suspect that if a solar public utility came up to go on one of those properties, she's going to be in here testifying that there's no jobs associated with that solar.
That would be correct.
So if she testifies against it, and we take Linda Parkowski's word pretty seriously up here, where is solar going to go?
That's a decision for Levy Court to make. Where do we want to allow solar?
Well, we know where we allow it, but if we have testimony that says, well, it's not a good place to put it because it takes away from my ability to attract business here, which are jobs, it kind of takes that out of the loop. There's no place unless we do a rezoning someplace or expand the growth zone.
Right now, utility solar can go in some AC and some AR areas within the county. There's area available to them, which takes the pressure off any industrial zone land. I believe the concern was if ultimately AC and AR are out of play altogether, there's increased pressure on industrial zoned land, and that is truly limited in the county.
So, Sarah, I respect your opinion. Do you agree with moratoriums in general?
I don't know that I could make a generalization. It truly depends on what the issue is. In this case, it could be seen as a belt and suspenders sort of. We're not seeing pressure for utility solar right now. Nobody has approached us. The only interest has been in community. So the threat is limited. It's not eliminated altogether, but it is a very limited threat for additional utility solar, certainly in the short term.
And given that there are no public utility applications right now for solar facilities, if we were to vote no on extending the moratorium, there's nothing impacted.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Buxton.
I think the thing that we have to consider is the finality of it all. No, you're good. The finality of it all, because clearly in the back of the room that have had to pull up early to come over here once again to deal with something that we really need to create some finality. Draw the line in the sand, stick to it, and let's move on. And when we continue to delay, we got to be here anyway. But there's some folks back there that really don't need to be here tonight, except for the fact that we haven't created a finish. That's all. Yeah.
Thanks. I appreciate that. And I appreciate them coming out and speaking their piece. But one of the testifiers doesn't want to extend the moratorium. He wants to end solar. That's not finality. That's not let's get the ordinance right and then allow it to go through. That one testimony was, I don't want solar at all. So
I respect his opinion, but the Levy Court isn't taking up that issue, is it?
No, it's not.
So then let's move on. Let's create finality.
Okay, any other commissioners? Commissioner Angel.
Thank you. The reason we're here still is because when we did the first one, moratorium, it was for 3 months. And then we realized that 3 months wasn't long enough, and we needed to extend it until September 8th, whether there was a line of people in line or not. For me, it's about doing what's right. This is what we said we needed to do. Yes, there was one that was denied, not because of what we did, because they didn't apply the proper application process, is my understanding. And then this kicked in for the first 3 months. So for me, it's about moving the process to an end date like we wanted to do, 6 months, which is September 8th. And that's all. I'm not going to be asking for any more moratoriums after September 8th. Plus, we had a lawsuit that was posed against us, and it was to build some time to see if the court would get in the court system to see if they could give us an answer how they were going to handle it so we could have a better idea. So that was my two-pronged process for supporting this, and I'm still supporting this. So I'm not jumping ship. I'm still moving forth with, even though it may be a short period of time, but I want to do what's right, what we said we were going to do.
All right, any other commissioners? Seeing none, can we have roll call, please, on ordinance LC 22-14? Okay, I thought we had a motion. Okay, let's have a motion, please. Hearing's closed.
Okay. Then I move to approve LC 2214 solar moratoriums as just said.
Second.
Thank you. A motion and a second to approve ordinance LC 22-14. If there's any questions on the motion, can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
As reason stated, yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes, public statement and reason stated.
Mr. Hall?
Part of my vote for no is just to help create pressure to finally resolve this. We have kicked the can down the road since March. To my knowledge, little to nothing has been done in the interim, and even this current moratorium ending on September 8th ends 5 days before we meet in September. So then there's another gap where we don't have a moratorium and we haven't got an opportunity to come together and actually consider anything else. So I believe that we need to get finality, as Commissioner Buxton said. So I'm voting no because we don't need a moratorium. We need a final answer.
Mr. Howell?
Yes, reason stated.
Mrs. Maston?
Yeah, yes, reason stated.
Mr. Sweeney?
I'm voting no. I don't believe moratoriums are as effective as stated. A moratorium on solar in this county is going to have zero impact on any applications that have come in. When we agreed to the ordinance, we had 99% of both parties that were for and against solar agreed to the ordinance that we wrote, and then one party came back and said, no, we want more, and that's why we're here tonight. So my vote's no.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes, based on the reasons already stated.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 5 yea, 2 nay.
Thank you. Roll call reveals ordinance LC 22-14 solar moratorium revised has been approved by Levy Court. At this time, we'll close the public hearings. We'll recess to committee meetings. First item on the agenda of committee meetings is Administration Committee. Mr. Angel, Chair, turn it over to you, sir. You have 4 items there.
Thank you, Mr. President. And before I turn this over to Commissioner Buxton, who has been also instrumental in getting Senator Carper in Bowers Beach and getting the inlet open and getting him on a boat to show him what needs to be done. And going to the meetings, most of the meetings that I couldn't get to, and I know Mr. Pettimaj was at those meetings too. But I'd like to give credit where credit's due. And Commissioner Buxton, as I said, I would turn this over to you for the Bay Shore, and Mr. Pettimaj as the administrator that followed through too. So I just want to make sure everybody understands why I'm doing that. Thank you.
Appreciate it, but no credit other than the Levy Court here tonight and Mr. Pettimaj and all the folks who are going to be involved in this. This has been a long journey, but we need to set the table, right? So Ada, Ms. Carter, Ms. Mayor, Madam Mayor, you're going to bring up friends, whomever it is that's testifying, speaking. Well, that works fine too. You know, I'm excited about this, obviously. This has the potential to really do some positive things and has some teeth. That's the good thing. Intention has always been there. It's just never really been a finish. I think we're there, or at least we got a good shot at this. Anyway, that's enough said. Take it away.
All right, thank you so much. My name is Ada Puzo. I've been the mayor of Bowers for around 8 years or so, and I have to tell you, I know how precious the minutes are in meetings like this, so I'm going to try to take as few as possible, but I do want to make sure that you understand what we're asking you to vote on tonight. I'm not sure how to signal to the, Mark, is that you who, like, how do I signal, like, to change slides? I am operations, you know. Okay, all right, I can do it by myself? All right, thank you, I appreciate it, Mark. All right, so like I said, I've been the mayor of Bowers for about 8 years. I was actually like the acting mayor for a couple years because no one wanted to run, but I think that should count anyway. But most of you, well, not most of you, I'm not really sure. Some of you might remember me as the business manager for Caesarani School District. That's when I was here most often. I am here tonight with Bob Wood, who is the mayor of Slaughter Beach, Kathy Locke, who is the previous mayor of Slaughter Beach. Ted Becker is the previous mayor of Lewis. He wasn't able to make it tonight, but don't feel too bad for him because he's like in Ireland, I think, right now. So don't worry, you know, he's doing fine. We're here tonight to introduce and invite you to join the Bay Beach Association. The mission of the Bay Beach Association is to advocate on behalf of the Bay and nearshore farming communities. As we all of us are in this group, like the Bayshore people and the nearshore farming communities, we're all trying to adapt and live with the changing conditions along the Delaware Bayshore. I mean, all you have to do is come and visit, and you can see it's different than it was a few years ago. We did provide a white paper to everyone. It has lots of details. I'm going to try just to take a few minutes to highlight some of those. And I think I should probably switch it now. Okay. All right, so there's a couple of things that are important to highlight, and some of this, I swear, just the beginning is going to sound like really dry, but in order to understand the end, it's important to know this thing called the WRDA Act. So the WRDA Act is the United States Water Resources Development Act. They are laws enacted by Congress to deal with various aspects of water resources: environmental, structural, navigational, flood protection, things like that. That act has been around since the 70s. So what's the big deal now? That's why we're here. So in order to, what's happened in just the previous thing is that the WRDA Act of 22, which hasn't passed yet, we're still working on it, but in the event it does pass, the Senate version of it has very good language for Delaware Bayshore towns. So we are trying to prepare to be ready for it to pass. We are hopeful. And so the one thing that we do know is language in an act is not enough. So just because there's language out there in an act, you still have to have the political will to move on that language. And so that's what we're here for. We are trying to prepare ourselves and the Bayshore towns and the farms that are close by to be ready in the event that it does pass. I can tell you that I'm new to this. When I became the mayor of Bowers, there were other things I was working on even before I became the mayor. But there's a lot of people in this room that have been working on this for probably 20 years. And so you want to say, okay, well then why weren't they successful yet? Because they were successful is the thing. They did plenty of things. In order for the Army Corps to be able to, or authorized to do a project, there's a lot of things you have to go through to get that project authorized. And that's what previous people have done. And so those are the shoulders I'm riding on right now. They did as much as they could, and then there wasn't the will in Delaware to move it any further forward. So then, luckily, people like Kathy decided to, it's like, no, we're not going to just put up with that. We're going to keep trying. So I became involved about 1.5 years ago, I think, Kathy, when she reached out to me and said, you know, you being a mayor of an incorporated town along the bay, and there's only 3 of us, there's only Lewis, Slaughter, and Bowers, and she said it was important for me to show up. So I show up. Now, I don't like being the one behind in knowledge. I don't like not knowing stuff. But I sat there as quiet as I could and wrote all my notes, and then I did my own research. So over the last 1.5 years, I have decided that this is a very worthy cause, that the people that have carried this from the 20 years ago to now is very worthy, and it's very exciting what's happening in the federal level right now. And I've already lost my train of thought, so if you could just give me a second. Hold on. All right, so I'm back now. Okay, so we have gotten a lot of support from the federal government. Carper and Blunt Rochester, they did put together something called a SURE Act, which is very exciting. And the thing is, even if that passes, someone has to come together in Delaware and be the non-federal partner just because the government says, yes, this is an authorized project now. We will make these adjustments so it's great for Delaware, which could happen. There still has to be someone in Delaware to be the non-federal partner. Traditionally, that has been DNREC. And I can tell you, you have to feel the same pain that the rest of us do. These little tiny communities have no voice. I mean, Bowers has, well, I mean, you've seen just recently with the dredging. Do you want to know how much effort that took us to get a dredge there? I mean, can you imagine what Kittumuck goes through, what Pickering goes through, Broadkill, all of these things, and because we're all separated. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to put us all together, and in order for us to have a true voice, those unincorporated communities need a voice, and that's you. That's you, in Kent County anyway. So we have Bowers, we have Slaughter, we have Lewis. We have representation because we're incorporated. The other ones aren't. I mean, you guys have to know the suffer and like the complaints that they have, and they have very good complaints, but they don't have anybody to help them except for themselves. But if we all get together, then we have a better chance. I'm completely off, so I'm just not even gonna look at my notes anymore. Just wanna let you know some things just off the top of my head. So of course this has to do with getting sand on the beach. Now that sounds extremely selfish from someone from a bayshore town, but what you don't understand, probably, because I didn't understand, is that sand on the beach protects the marshes, and the marshes protect the farmlands. The farmlands feed us. So it's not just the sand on the beach. We're protecting this whole environment to protect our way of life in Delaware. And the marshes, there's so many things I should go into, but you know, I'm not going to. I'm just going to go straight to the good things that are happening in this legislation that could possibly pass are scope. So scope of this is in order for the Army Corps to be authorized to help, it has to be an authorized project. The language in the new Word of Bill 22 authorizes Bayshore to be an authorized project. So that means the Army Corps can help. That means they spend a good percentage of the money. In the past, that was 65%, and then the local, the non-federal partner had to come up with 35%. DNREC didn't like 35%. Well, this new language changes it to 10%. So not only does it authorize the Delaware Bayshores, it reduces the amount of non-federal contribution to 10%. It will be very difficult to not help us. And it's not just the Bayshore towns. It's a lot of Delaware. And I'm off topic, so I'm not even going to try anymore. I'm completely gone.
little bit more in the language, right, that assisted in the scope. When they look at the scope and the procedures for getting these projects done, they kind of expedited that process, correct?
They did what, now remember, what we're talking about hasn't passed yet.
If it does.
If it passes. And so there's a lot of people working very hard on it. So because I'm a little messed up, I'm thinking over here, I'm gonna let Kathy, would you mind chipping in there?
Actually, it did pass both the House and the Senate. It is currently in conference with, I'm sorry,
You go ahead.
With the House of Representatives and the Senate. They're working out the details. To me, it's very critical to the state of Delaware, but especially the Delaware Bayshore communities, because what this does is it makes the Delaware Bayshore, for the very first time, a priority area for the Army Corps of Engineers. It affects Kent County specifically from Bombay Hook, because it allows the Corps of Engineers under the WERDA 2022 Act to make emergency repairs if a storm, a hurricane or storm damages Bombay Hook. And it does that without having to go back and get another act of Congress. So all they have to do is find the funds, discretionary funds, and they can make repairs. They can make repairs on the various other Bayshore beaches. And what we are attempting to do here, and what we are asking the council to do, is to become a partner with the various Bayshore communities and with Sussex County. We've approached both Sussex and we are approaching Kent to work with us to help fund our consultant with the group that we formed. We had previously been a very loose group, and Commissioner Buxton attended several of our meetings. Mike Pettit-Damage has attended several of our meetings, and we have been successful in doing several things. If we could change the slide quickly.
I forgot slides too.
For the first time, we've worked in partnership together with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, with DENREC, and with the coastal communities, and that is absolutely critical. So we just wanted to say these are our accomplishments to date, as being an informal, loose coalition of communities.
I'll take everything.
And our congressional delegation, a special thank you to Senator Carper, actually attended our meetings, listened to our concerns, and formulated with our consultant the WERDA Act that has been so critical and is so critical to the Delaware Bay as we move forward.
Gotcha. So, thank you. I appreciate that. All of these things that have happened are fabulous and were necessary. If this passes the way we want it to pass, we still need the will of the state of Delaware to do their part. And so most of us know if we're all standing by ourselves, we barely get attention, much less any movement. But if we all come together, and you guys represent the unincorporated communities, we represent the incorporated towns, we can speak with one voice, and we have a better chance of moving this along. That's what I believe, and that's why I'm here.
I think in getting into this is a little late. Commissioner Angel's been there every step of the way, of course. I was brought in after a request, I don't know, maybe a year ago, best. Anyway, and what I noticed was a lot of loose ends. Well, first I noticed, doing some research, a lot of hard work that's gone in over the years that didn't bear fruit. A lot of studies, a lot of meetings, a lot of good folks pouring a lot of energy in. What's changed? Well, I tell you what's changed. The funding's there now. The percentage has dramatically been cut. The ability to access emergency, intervention, and then putting this team together so that it's not whack-a-mole, where you have a small unincorporated area of a few residents trying to gain the attention of folks to get help that they so desperately need. When they have this group together, I think they can work as one. The process is more streamlined. So I think it's a really good opportunity to be very successful, especially if this thing goes through and passes. I'm talking about the federal legislation.
Word of 22, sure. From my understanding is because it's in conference now, so you have the House version of the act, you have the Senate version of the act. They all have to get together and pass like a single version for the two to vote on, and then ultimately go up, to the president. So that's what we're waiting for.
Well, I want to bring up Pickering and Kitsummick because John Capello, who's at Pickering, and I've helped them in their area when they've have nor'easters hit, and the latest flood, they just wiped out all their dunes. And Kitsummick, Commissioner Sweeney helped me on the first one when he was running for election for Levy Court, helped me get Kits cleaned up, and they were going to arrest me for putting the sand back on the beach because I didn't have a permit. So one of the things I'd like to see done also with your committee is during a disaster, we have to look at that permitting process. It needs to go away for what you need to do because people wanted to help. I had people with tractors. I got 2 people to help me with kits, and we were going to get arrested for putting the sand back on the beach where it came from, clean off the roadway so people can get out of their homes and get to the road and get to the market. So there are a lot of good things that happen during issues like that, but anything to help the Bay Shore stay a Bay Shore, I'm for, and I'll get arrested if I have to. But all I can say is I bought a tractor to help. That's what I do, and I just don't do for just the beaches. I also do it for the tornado victims and anybody else that needs it for my area. But that's just one person. We need a lot of people to help out because a lot of the elderly in those Bay communities cannot do the things that other people can help. So I applaud Commissioner Buxton and Mike Pettit-Amage for going to those meetings. I only made the first Slaughter Beach one when it first was held. I'm sorry I couldn't get it due to my time constraints getting down there, but I have followed it and I'm part of it. So, but I know Mike Costello, who's with Kitsummick, is the HOA person, the president there, and we are in constant contact during a storm, as well as the Capellas. And all I can say is they reach out when there's help to be needed because they know who to call. And I'd just like to see us be on the forefront and not at the back end of this. So I'm glad that Commissioner Buxton was able to reach out to get Senator Carpers to get the Army Corps engineers, which I have talked on the phone, and it's like talking to a dead issue unless you have somebody above him, which he was able to do. So I understand that, and I applaud him for able to do that. So, but anything I know I can do, I'm sure Levy Court will look at this as a way of helping the community. I don't see why they wouldn't. I just want to say that. That's my feeling.
I appreciate it.
I saw you going up as far as Kitsummick and having District 1. Is there any reason why Woodland Beach isn't included?
Would you repeat that, please?
I see you've gone up as far as Kitsummick with this. Is there any reason why Woodland Beach isn't included in this?
No, there is no reason. The only thing that I did ask that question of the people that I've been working with. The only thing that I do know is that there were easements that were signed so that the state of Delaware and the Army Corps have the right to do beach replenishment because of easements that were signed by property owners, private property owners. And my understanding is that they haven't, and so that limits them. That's my understanding.
In addition, I can speak for myself because I was the one that began to organize this, and I based the communities on what was in the Army Corps of Engineers beneficial use of dredged materials for the Delaware Bay, and Woodland Beach was not in that study. And the WERDA Act that we've been referring to really is tied to the beneficial use of dredged materials. I think, however, it would be an excellent idea to bring any communities in that you represent, and they would certainly be more than welcome, because there's strength again in numbers, and all of these communities need a voice. And that's the purpose
To your
of
point, there are
organizing
a few
this.
people down there that have been reaching out for help in various ways. And these are new people that have moved into the area from out of state that really want to make a difference down there. So I was a little concerned when I kind of saw it stop at Kids Hammock, and I'm thinking, gee whiz, we've got
Yeah.
Woodland Beach to contend with.
My fault, because of the beneficial use of dredged materials
Okay,
study.
understood. All right.
Correct. If you've done explain is to have Mr. Pettit-Demise talk about funding, or do you want to say something else?
There are two things that we're asking for. Number one, we would like the counties to be an active and voting member of this association. So we'll have Bowers Beach, Slaughter Beach, Lewis Beach, and then each of the counties as voting members. Of course, we'll listen to and invite all of the Bay communities, and you will vote for them if there's something to vote for. As far as funding is concerned, we have identified and found a very good consultant that I believe is the person that we need to work through this. So we have deliverables for the next 12 months, exactly what we want to get done in the next 12 months, and this person is very well qualified. And so the funding that we are asking for is just for 12 months. We have deliverables at the end of 12 months, and we will be able to show you what we use for that money. And then it's done after that. I mean, we would like to have more if there's more projects to work on, of course, but it's a deliverable that we can provide to you. And we have identified the person that we believe will get us across the finish line. So we're asking for participation, active participation in the association, and $30,000 for the first year.
Mr. Pettit-Demise, do you have anything you want to brief us on in regards to that explanation? I know we have a motion for later, but what do you think?
I think Ms. Puzo described it perfectly. The motion captures both points. The future partnership agreement with, including Sussex County and us as our participants in the organization, and then the funding. We've identified a source of the funding in the motion as well, discussed it with Ms. Durham, and that would be the recommended source of funding would be the FY23 contingency. Other than that, I'm open to questions as well. Thank you.
President?
As being a commissioner at large, I represent the entire county.
I understand.
And I think this is really a no-brainer, and I think it's a duty of the county to step in and represent the ones that aren't represented. So that's where I'm coming from on this, and I think it's long past due. I'm very familiar with all of our coastline beaches, and like I said, I think it's a no-brainer. So I'm happy you're here. I'm happy you got the right person as a consultant.
We do.
And I think that we're in a good position to move forward. So thank you. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.
So before we just do a show of hands, at the end of this, well, actually at the end of Commissioner Angel's committee, there's 3 other items. There'll be time for public comments if anybody in the crowd would like to expand on this. And then the motion for later tonight, is that just a simple up or down?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Well, it's a vote.
Yeah, sure. So without that, are any more questions? Any more comments? All right, show of hands, support to move this on. I see Commissioner Hall.
In favor.
Buddy? All right, looks like 7-0. That, I believe that's it for now.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Back to Commissioner Angel on item number 2.
Thank you. Joe, you're up, sir. Munis update?
If you all like would join us at the table, maybe more comfortable for you. Also, if Mr. Payne wants to join us at the table as well, Matt, come on down. Just by way of introduction, everyone knows Joe Simmons, our Director of Information Technologies. Joining us at the table also, Matt Payne is principal with CAI, our consultant project manager on our ERP project, and Charmel Williams is our change manager who's representing CAI as well, and they're here to talk to you specifically about the change management aspects of this project. Turn it over to Joe. Thank you, Joe.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, President Pepper and other commissioners. As part of the Enterprise Resource ERP project approved by Levy Court with Tyler Tech's implementation of Munis, Levy Court decided to engage Computer Aided Incorporated, CAI, to augment our project management and project team. As part of this engagement included a role of change management analyst. The project and the Tyler assessment, along with ISA World and other significant initiatives, will significantly impact the county's core IT systems. We are developing a plan to ensure that systems users utilize the tools at their disposal to help them deal and adopt new software and procedures. In simple terms, change management seeks to facilitate and achieve the successful implementation of transformation processes, which involves workers and for people accepting and assimilating change and reducing the resistance to it. Charmel Williams is here to present an overview of the change management strategy for IT to support our implementation of these projects. Charmel?
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Joe, for the wonderful introduction. My name is Charmel Williams, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you. For today's meeting, we're going to talk through change management, the people side of change. So we're not going to talk about IT change management, which involves IT fixes and elevating to production and change control boards. We're not talking about any of that stuff, not the technical stuff, just the change, the people side of change. So to talk through the agenda, we're going to talk through the case of change management, the case for change management. What is change management? The evolution of change management, and why change management is important. And then we're going to talk through the change management framework, why many organizations prefer the ProSci methodology of change management. And then I'll kind of touch on some of the objectives of change management or of the ProSci methodology, which is ADKAR, which is awareness of the need for change, the desire to change, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. So we'll go through that as well, just briefly. How does project management differ from change management? That's often a question that I get. 3 of the outcomes of change management that we should be targeting, so we'll discuss that in more depth: the speed of adoption, ultimate utilization, and proficiency. So I'll go more into that. And then the change management approach, the 3-phase process that's best in class for implementing change. Then we'll talk through the milestones and phases. That's basically referring back to the 3 phases, the 3-phase process, but just talking through the deliverables under each phase. And then the benefits of applying change management: increased probability of project success, minimizing resistance, increasing engagement, and so forth. So we'll go through that briefly. And then what does change management mean for our project? Coaching, change champions engagement, training, communications, and so forth. And then the importance of sponsorship in driving success. Sponsorship actually is the #1 contributor to success in change management. And then we're going to talk through the best practices for sustaining change. Okay, what is change management? So, and this is getting back to the case for change management. So it's been said that the only thing that's constant in life is change, and that people react to change in many different ways. So some people fear heading into a direction that's largely uncharted. Others respond to change by rejecting the possibilities, and some people just simply ignore it. They hear about it, but it doesn't resonate with them. They keep doing the day-to-day. But increasingly, actually, many people are embracing change more and more because they're starting to see that new insights can be gained from change management and that there's actually personal growth that can be experienced. So without a doubt, change can be an emotional experience, but there are certain approaches that we can take to help people understand and facilitate their own individual changes. So what is change management? In a nutshell, change management is a discipline that guides how we prepare, how we equip, and how we support individuals and teams to successfully adopt change in order to drive organizational success and outcomes. So essentially, you can think of it as the process, the tools, the techniques that we use to manage the people side of change, not the IT side of change, but the people side of change to achieve the required results. So the evolution of change management's been around for like decades. It started in the early 90s, 1994, and it continues to evolve, and so are the best practices as well. The evolution of change management really hinges on the fact that how change is managed in an organization continues to evolve. So, there's increasing complexity in change initiatives. And what once was like ad hoc approaches, willy-nilly, let's just do a communications plan, let's just do a training plan, now it's actually driven by like robust plans, like structure, processes, and deliverables. So it's now a real structured discipline. So given the increased scale of complexities with change initiatives across the enterprise, many organizations began exploring vendor relationships that were aimed at advancing the change management discipline. And so that's how ProSci came into place. And that was founded actually in 1994 by a program manager. His name is Jeff Hyatt. And so anytime you hear change management, you'll hear of the ProSci methodology. ProSci actually means professional science, and it's based on scientific principles and research applied in a professional setting. So it's pretty interesting, and we'll briefly touch on that. So that's why ProSci emerged as the world leader in change management solutions and was therefore selected by many organizations as the change management partner. So there's many different methodologies. There's change agility, but for the most part, you'll hear about ProSci, which is professional science. So why is change management important? So with an embedded change management capability, organizations have twice as many successful projects as they would without a change management capability. So studies confirm that with change management, employees adopt change faster, they're more complete, they're more proficient, they stay engaged in the organization during disruptive change or during restructuring. They're not, likely to quit. They're going to ride it out. They understand why the change is happening, and that's key. It may not always be to their benefit, but the fact that they understand why the change is happening is key. And they have the time and the tools to get on board and to feel heard and to feel supported. So that's the whole purpose of change management. So next we're going to talk through the change management framework. And so I mentioned earlier about the 5 objectives and it's called ADKAR, awareness of the need for change, the desire to change, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. These are the 5 milestones that an employee needs to go through in order to change successfully on an individual level. They need to kind of meet these 5 milestones. So we'll talk through the awareness of the need to change. An employee understands why the change is happening. As a project team, we have to spread clear and effective awareness communications, have a robust communication plan, communicate frequently and transparently. So what that basically means is if we don't know something, say we don't know it. If we know something but we can't share it, say, hey, we know something but we just can't share it at this time. So being transparent. In terms of desire to support the change, that's the D in ADKAR. Stakeholder engagement. Facilitate stakeholder engagements to educate the departments on the level and magnitude of the change. So you can't build a desire to change if you haven't been engaged. So engagement. Building knowledge on how to change. Employees need to have that knowledge, training. I know how to change. So that's what an employee should be saying to themselves. Tyler, they're leading the development and execution of training programs for the ERP project. and they're providing employees with the knowledge of how to change. And then in the A, which is ability, and that's demonstrating new skills and behaviors. So that's increasing proficiency. So not only do I have the knowledge, but I can, enforce it. I know how to, in user acceptance testing, I know what to do. I've been trained, I'm following through, I'm demonstrating proficiency. And then the reinforcement part, the R, where you see the add car, we need to make the change stick. And I always say that change management doesn't end when the project goes live. We have to figure out a way to keep it reinforced for long-term sustenance. Tracking and measuring change management, and so forth, and change readiness, and making sure that people are ready for the change. You can do that through surveys, focus groups, and so forth. So just keep in mind that these are all in order of how a person or employee would change. So this is the natural order of things. You can't have a desire to change if you're not aware of the change. So that's why we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You can't have the knowledge to change if you don't really have the desire to. We can force them to change, but then, that wouldn't be a successful change process. So, and then those are in the right column, those are the, the communication, engagement, tracking, making sure they understand, they have the knowledge, the training and coaching and support sponsorship that I talked through. And these are the targeted outcomes of change management. But before I get to that, I just wanted to talk through, we talked about change being that transition from the old to the new. So a successful change requires clearly defined destination. So you have like the current state, you have the transition state, that process of moving to the future state, and the difference between project management and change management is that the project management is more solutions oriented, it's solutions focused, it's designed and developed and delivered effectively. That's the goal. But with change management, we don't care if it's like delivered effectively. We want to make sure that it's embraced. We want to make sure that it's adopted. We want to make sure that it's utilized effectively by the employees. So that's kind of the difference between project management and change management. You can have successful project management, but nobody's utilizing the system. Nobody knows how to use the system. Then it's not effective from a change management perspective. So in terms of outcomes, these are some of the targeted outcomes of change management. We have speed of adoption. How quickly are people up and running with the new system, processes, and job roles? The ultimate utilization, so how many employees of the total population are demonstrating buy-in to the system and are using the new solution. So in other words, they're not reverting back to old ways of working. They're not finding shortcuts in the system. They're actually using the new system as designed. And then proficiency, how well are individuals performing compared to what the change management plan designed? So we want to make sure that they're proficient with the change. All right, and then I won't go through all this, but this is the 3-phase change process. So to implement a change. So you have here phase 1, and we talked about ADKAR, ADKAR. You have awareness and desire that falls under phase 1. That's preparing for the change and everything we need to do to prepare for the change. Defining your change strategy, preparing the change management team, getting that together. We have to do an assessment of an organization, creating a change management strategy. I think I mentioned that. Developing your sponsorship model, assessing the structure and the roles of the sponsor. What roles are they going to take? The sponsor's competencies. Are they fully capable of being sponsors and how we coach them on that and so forth. Preparing the change management team, acquiring the resources, assessing the team's competencies, because different people on the change management team may have different competencies. Somebody may be a good communicator, good trainer, and so forth. And then under phase 2, this is just developing the change management plans, the communication plan, training plan, coaching plan, resistance management plan, and so forth. So as the change manager, we'll put that all together. And then we have phase 3, that's collecting and analyzing feedback. That looks like listening to employees and gathering feedback, auditing and compliance, making sure that we collect and analyze feedback, diagnose gaps, and manage resistance that we may face. Developing corrective action plans, enabling sponsors and coaches, and just reinforcement mechanisms. How do we intend to reinforce the change? Because if you don't use it, you lose it. So we want to make sure the change sticks. And then we're going to go to, so this is just a recap of the previous slide. You'll see the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. We talked about the AD card, the A and the D falling under phase 1, awareness of the change, desire to change. Phase 2 would be the K and the A, the knowledge and the ability to change. And then phase 3 is the reinforcement. So those are just the deliverables and the milestones under each of the phases. So these are like the stakeholder analysis that we would put together, the change impact assessment. Different business areas are impacted by change differently. They may use the system the same way, but maybe business area 1 uses the system in a different way. I don't know. So that's basically what this is saying. And then at the end, you definitely want to hold, like where phase 3 is, you have the go live, and then the change reinforcement, celebrating successes as well. And then you have the postmortem or lessons learned. Want to make sure that you talk through what went well, what didn't go well, and what we should do for the future. So that's part of like the postmortem lessons learned at the end. Okay, so these are some of the benefits of applying change management: increased probability of project success, increased adoption of new business processes, solutions, systems, policies, and skill sets. Minimizing resistance, managing employee resistance, because there's going to be resistance. So we just want to figure out a way to manage that. Increasing engagement with the stakeholders, the leaders, the impacted users. Preparing the organization for the transition from, we talked to the current state to the future state. And creating consistency and efficiencies in our change management approach. And we can use that same approach with different initiatives. And then building change competency in the organization. So you can actually train your employees to be comfortable with change, with major change. But that takes some time. That's a skill, a competency that has to be built. And so what does change management mean for our project? So these are all change management deliverables: the communications, the go live and post go live support, white glove support, maybe with the executives if they're having some issues with Office 365, they have, a support person that's there to kind of help them along. You can have the change champions engagement, a representative from each department that would help folks, acclimate to the change. Resistance management, coaching, again, change management, change champions engagement, training, and then change management plan. That includes like the stakeholder analysis and the business change impact assessment. So those are all considered like change management deliverables. And we're almost done. So sponsorship, this is pretty key. Sponsorship is consistently the #1 contributor to success across many change management studies, especially in 9 of ProSci's studies. Sponsorship was #1. So you want to make sure that you have active and visible executive sponsorship, structured change management approach, not just something that's willy-nilly. We actually have a structured approach and strategy. A dedicated change management resources and funding, frequent and open communication about the change and the need for change management, and keep reinforcing that so that it sticks. Employee engagement and participation, engagement and integration with the project management team, and engagement with and support from middle management. So sponsorship is key. And you'll see on the next slide why that is, and we're almost at the end. So employees are more likely to adopt change when there's an active engagement across these 3 roles within the organization: the change sponsor and leader. They articulate a clear vision. They have a high degree of employee influence, and that's why we have to make sure that they're set up for success. And then we have the project manager in green, and they do the project management things. And then you have the change professional, the change practitioner. They have a low degree of employee influence, and they support the change efforts based on expertise, tools, and methodology, and so forth. So you'll see in blue, we just have to make sure those change sponsors are engaged because they do have that high degree of employee influence. And the final slide, so this is just best practices for sustaining change. So organizations that are planning and resourcing for reinforcement are more likely to meet or exceed project objectives than those organizations that actually don't have a sustaining process or a reinforcement process in place. So what that basically means is when a project goes live, change management does not end. Because it's very easy for employees, I mentioned this earlier, for employees to revert back to the old way of doing things or create workarounds in a new process. We don't want that. And these are just some best practices for reinforcing and sustaining change. I'll allow you to kind of read through that, but just continue to reinforce the why in your messaging, plan and resource for reinforcement activities, engaging your sponsors and making sure the sponsors, I can't stress that enough, stay engaged. And then these are some tactics on the right-hand side for reinforcing and sustaining change. Providing that ongoing and consistent communication, introducing support mechanisms, and reinforcing change at the individual level and reinforcing change at the organizational level. And there's different things under there as well. But that's what I have for in a nutshell. So any questions that anyone may have? Are you all pretty familiar with change management? The people side of change?
Commissioner Sweeney, please.
Yeah.
I am.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing this stuff for 45 years, so yeah, I understand it. How do you handle opposition to change? And the social change?
That's a good question. The way I've done it, I'm in the process of conducting interviews and just ensuring that employees feel heard. I don't want them to feel judged, but just listening to them and just coming up with ways, because I find that a lot of times people are resistant to change because they don't really understand how this change is going to make their life better. And maybe sometimes it doesn't, but maybe because they don't understand the vision. The vision hasn't been articulated clearly. So by listening to them and listening to their feedback, I could take that to the change sponsor and we can kind of clear up some things for that employee. But it's all about communication and being honest and being transparent.
So what you're saying is when you listen and you interview the employees who show opposition, you're coming back to the 7 of us sitting up here and telling us what the employees are saying?
Well, I could come back but it's more about the change sponsors. So just going back to the change sponsors and saying, hey, I don't think this vision has been articulated well enough. We may have to go back and, maybe in a department town hall or in a one-on-one with their manager, we may have to articulate this a little bit better because maybe they don't really understand why they're changing, why this is happening now. That's what I find a lot of times is that they don't really understand the full gamut of why things are happening. Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure.
No, Matt, no.
One thing I would just add is, you really have to listen very attentively to what the people are saying because they might raise a point that someone hadn't thought of. So we're running the project. We're trying to get to the end line. We're trying to get it done well. We're trying to get it done on time. But individuals that do this stuff every day are the experts. And so they may be resistant, but they could have a very valid reason why they're resistant. And so we not only have to listen and document that, we have to kind of be able to respond intelligently. Now they may actually have a point, which may mean we have to go back and redesign or redo something differently. So it's not always just changing them to our position. It's also us potentially having to adjust to a valid point that was brought up throughout the project.
And
go ahead, Joe.
I can give a practical example, and if you guys, a lot of people in the county may notice, we've been putting these practices in place and starting them in our Office 365 rollout. If you understand what we did and how that project went over. Because we started incorporating some of Shamil's change management principles in our project. We found immediate benefits, whether it was identifying change chambers in the department, working with Laura Whistler with a marketing team for Office 365 to get the information out, communicating. And then when we had places where there's a little resistance for multi-factor authentication, we went to that employee and kind of explained to him the rationale why. It's for our own benefit, it's for cybersecurity, it's for, to make sure we know that whoever accesses your account is that person. And that we had a couple of employees that, maybe was resistant at first, but after we sat down and listened to them, listened to their concerns, and then explained to them the benefits they was having with multi-factor authentication, we had a lot of employees accept the change, and I was like wowed that, first started off that, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not putting on my cell phone. I'm not, whatever you have to do. And after, like you said, again, we put a lot of these principles in place. We seen immediate impact. And I think speaking for, the IT department and how that Office 365 project is going, we can tell immediate difference by the change management principles that Shamel's brought to the county so far.
I would just add, all the large initiatives that we do as a company, we incorporate a dedicated OCM manager. In the past, I know you said since '94, which is about a decade after I started, but back then, like the project managers used to have to do some of these things and basically found out they weren't necessarily great at those just because they were great at being project managers. And so this has evolved over time. And so we find it to be incredibly important with every initiative that we do that we have this role, of a certain magnitude, because there's a lot of literature out there. And Commissioner Sweeney, I appreciate you have more experience than I do with OCM, but what I found, particularly in the government space, there's a lot of history of projects being completed, but because the adoption wasn't there, the value that you put forward of the tax money that you're spending on this, you're not recognizing the value. And so, the incremental cost for a change manager is really well worth it to ensure at the end of the day that you have a solution that everybody is using as quickly as possible.
Thanks. I'm happy to hear you say that because I'm an advocate for this date, that one goes away, and you start using. If you don't like it, the old system's gone.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Definitely, absolutely a proponent of not being able to go backwards. Yes. So it's kind of like you burn the ships, type of philosophy. It's kind of like once you get to a certain point, we're all in. We make it, we come back to yourselves and say, okay, here's where we are. Is everybody okay? We're going forward. Once we get the okay, we're going forward. We're not going backwards.
Commissioner Buckland?
You did a nice job. You clarified some things I wanted to. Other than 45 years? Trying to do the math here.
Dude, I'm 61. I started this when I was 16, doing it for Kent Votech Vocational School.
Oh, wow.
Proud of you.
And I'm not doing it anymore. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, move this on to the business meeting, or Mr. Pendermaj.
Well, this is not an action item. This was more of an informational session just to kind of update you on where we're at. Next week, Joe's going to be updating you on the broader ERP Munis project. Yes. And the progress we've made there through the early phases of that as well. So quarterly we want to meet with Levy Court to just give you a progress report, and this was the first one. So thank you very much, Shimo, for doing it, and thank you for being with us tonight. Joe?
Any further questions for the committee? No? Joe, you're on the next one for Ezra.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. So we're here to bring forth the Esri hardware upgrade bid results for our Geographic Information System, GIS, that creates, manages, and analyzes all type of data for the county maps. The county utilizes Esri in our planning, public works, and public safety departments. I have Hannah Morris here, our GS administrator. She'll give you a brief overview of the project, including the timeline and the bid results. Hannah?
Hi, my name's Hannah Morris. I'm the GIS administrator for Kent County. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, and I'll try to keep it short and sweet. As you may know, Kent County has a rich history with GIS supporting critical departmental functions, as Joe just mentioned, and the current county managed system is approaching its end life. This upgrade that we're going to inform you about allows for the foundational GIS system to be brought to a more modern version. It allows for greater support, improved performance, as well as improved security. It also lays the groundwork for future enhancements so that the IT department can support the evolving needs of the county and provide modern GIS tools for both internal and external stakeholders. Currently, Kent County is operating at Esri's version of 10.5.1, which is no longer being supported as of December 1st, 2022. With this upgrade, we will have the possession of Esri's latest and greatest version of 11.0, which will introduce new features for data management and administration, updates across applications, and enhanced functionality throughout the product. Just to give you a brief explanation about the timeline on the screen, once we're able to procure the hardware for our project, Esri will assign us a professional services team with 52 hours of consulting services to assist with the installation and configuration of our new hardware. The remaining hours will be allocated to knowledge transfer of the new technology. After installation and configuration, Esri will provide 30 hours of remote services to assist the county in migration of the new data from our current system of 10.5.1 to the new 11.0 system. The hardware elements included in the request for quotation represent the infrastructure recommended to support an Esri best practice implementation. On June 29th, 2022, Kent County issued a request for quotation for all necessary hardware to sustain the hardware portion of the upgrade. On July 19th, 2022, a committee reviewed the 4 submissions that we received. After the review, the committee decided that the submission from Avanti Data Products Corporation would be best suited for Kent County due to their response time, the low pricing, and the lead time of the products. The quotation from Avanti is in the amount of $63,510 and covers all of the servers and other hardware. All hardware has already been fully budgeted in the appropriate capital projects fund and was approved by finance. Lastly, the approach to this project follows Esri's and generally accepted IT best practices. Downtime will be minimized, data sets will be appropriately migrated from this current system to a more modern system. There will be valuable knowledge transfer and documentation that the county will be able to reference and use in the future. That's it.
Okay. Just want to just clarify, what we're bringing forth tonight is the hardware server portion of it. There will be a smaller professional services to actually configure Esri software that we already own, that we have under maintenance, that will cover that. And then in the phase 2 would be the actual conversion of our current mapping system into this new mapping system. And our plan is to do a side-by-side cutover. So we'll configure the new server, a standalone, and then at a certain point in time, we'll cut off the old Esri server that was running now. So there will be no downtime or disruptions. As we know that Esri mapping is very critical to the county's operations far as in those planning, public works, and public service departments. And this would be, like you said, Hannah mentioned that it would be the best of breed for his Esri environment that would take the county, capacity for his GIS to the next level. So I'm very pleased. This is a long coming project. I think we probably started this project, wanted to start it before COVID, and COVID came, and then ERP started to come down. So this got pushed back. So we're butting up against the end of life of the software, again, December 1st, 2022. So I'm very, very excited about getting this project started.
Joe, there was 4 bidders and only 2 submitted bids that were complete, correct?
There were 4. The 4 things that we went off of for like criteria for accepting a bid was the price, obviously. Did the vendor follow the instructions and lead times? 2 of them didn't follow the instruction by giving us lead time. Therefore, so we went off of price. So it was really against two in the end. And it was a significant difference, so that's why we picked the other one. Also, the vendor, Avanti, we've gotten phones from them in the past, and they've been a reliable vendor.
Thank you. Any questions, gentlemen, ladies? Commissioner Sweeney.
Thanks, Commissioner Angel. So how often does Esri do these kind of forklift upgrades that require staff to change our hardware out?
As far as the hardware, I don't know when the last time you did that.
Well, like you said, our current version is 10.5, and the issues we had with previously with Esri, we found out that the hardware we did have doesn't meet the specs for CPU processor speed and memory that the new version requires. And even our current 10.5, the specs for our Intel CPU is right at the edge for as far as performance. So the reason, obviously the hardware we're running on now is, looking back probably 7-8 years old. So it is, the hardware itself is getting kind of end of life far as the hardware. So that's why we chose to go ahead and upgrade the hardware. And plus, in this new version that we're going to, there's more advantage of doing VMware and splitting the servers up, where we had one server basically performing two functions. Either they was performing the database function and also the application servers function to render the maps, where now we can split that off into two different servers and have increased performance. So it's, it's not only just that because the hardware is older, it's just taking advantage of the newer software.
Do you have a plan to repurpose the old hardware?
We can see what applications we have, but unfortunately, with the decisions that the Levy Court and the county direction we're going to the cloud environment, Azure is probably one of our main remaining large applications that is going to be on site, because the processing power needs to do the things we do in the county for different mappings and different things. We can look at repurposing that to some kind of data store, backup server, maybe an analysis server, cubing for data. So we can definitely look into that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay, move forward to the business meeting. Mr. Hall?
In favor.
Thank you. 7-up. Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Okay, thank you.
Anna? Okay, next one, Mr. Cuela.
Good evening, Commissioners. Chairman Angel. Commissioners may recall last month there was a discussion about the Kent County metal policy. Staff took many of the comments that were made at that discussion and incorporated into a policy so you could actually see the revisions that were being discussed. Specifically, those would add a former resident as someone eligible for the medal, as well as someone who served exceptionally meritoriously for the nation, and then updated some language regarding some wording revisions to reflect more accurately the current identification of the HR office as well as our building. And it is before you, is in your packet for further discussion tonight in committee. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Mr. Cuela? Mr. Hall, any questions for Mr. Cuela?
No questions.
Okay. Move it forward to the business meeting. Mr. Hall?
No.
6-1. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Any public comments on the first 4 items? Any public comments?
We have anyone online who wishes to address Levy Court on the 4 items that we just spoke to in the Administration Committee, please press star 3 on your mobile phone or the raise hand icon on your desktop, and we'll bring you in.
I see no hands raised at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Back to you, sir.
Thank you. This time, Finance Committee, Mrs. Maston's chair. Turn to you, ma'am.
Yes, the first item on the agenda is the Smyrna Opera House renovations. Mr. Cantlin, could you step forward to the mic, please?
Good evening. How are you?
Just fine. Nice to see you, Jim.
You too. My name is Jim Canelon. I'm the treasurer of the Smyrna Clayton Heritage Association, which is the governing arm of the Smyrna Opera House. What we're requesting is when we renovated our theater in 2003, a proscenium was added to the stage and the balcony was added to the back of the theater. And at that time, they were both painted gold and gilded in a very detailed fashion. Nearly 20 years later, we're getting ready to celebrate our 20-year anniversary of our renovation. And the gilding and the paint has deteriorated to the point where it needs to be refurbished, which is a very detailed and expensive proposition. And what we're requesting is a funding of $8,000 to get this completed.
Any commissioners have questions for Mr. Cantlin? Show of hands to move it forward to the business meeting. Mr. Hall?
Approved.
Any public comments?
That's a great presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. Planning Services Committee, Mr. Buxton, back to you, sir.
Thank you. I believe Ms. Kiefer will be joining us momentarily.
Thank you, Commissioners. The first item before you tonight is a change order for one of our housing rehab projects. This is the second change order you've seen. Unfortunately, this is a house where every time we do something, we find something else. So in this case, the last change order addressed, I believe, 2 tubs/showers in the house. When we pulled those out, we realized all of the plumbing needed to be redone. So this change order addresses that. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Next one.
The next item is a draft ordinance, LC 2216. Commissioners, I believe, alluded to this earlier this evening. As currently written, the definition of community solar references regulation by the Public Service Commission. That, by definition, leaves out any area under control of the co-op. We've got 3 projects right now that would qualify as community solar, but they're within the co-op, so they can't be processed administratively as community solar projects. So this text amendment simply removes the reference to the Public Service Commission and instead inserts the size limitation of 50 acres. So that opens up the balance of the county to community solar, regardless of in whose service area it might be. Happy to answer any questions.
Just one copy, or one comment for the commissioners. I really appreciate Mrs. Kiefer bringing this forward, because personally, I did not know that the co-op was not regulated by the PSC, and once she brought it to the attention, in all fairness, it needed to be excluded so that the co-op could be included. So thanks a lot, Mrs. Kiefer.
Any other comments? Commissioner Angel?
Yes, is there any governing body like the DPL that would have any regulation with this then?
I'm not certain I follow your question. DPNL is already included.
Okay.
They are regulated by the PSC.
Okay,
We had them included with, we have excluded with Stellar Electric Co-op.
gotcha. All right, thank you.
And just to note, if this is introduced tonight, we're actually set to take it through public hearing in September.
Any comments, questions? Show of hands. 7 up, or 6 up. Commissioner Hall?
I'm good with it.
7-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Any public comments on the previous two?
I see no hands raised online at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. President, back to you.
Thank you. Mr. Sweeney is anxiously awaiting his turn for Community Services Committee.
Yes, Jeremy, you can join us at the table. Dr. Welliver, you can join us at the table, please. Spotlight. And Ms. Durham's already there. So who's taking the lead? Apparently, since Jeremy didn't come right to the table, Ms. Durham must be taking the lead.
She is.
So just to preface this is something that we've been talking about since Brad Eby was here. That tells you how long ago it was. So every year we've dealt with it the same way since then. So table's yours.
Let me make the correction. I was the chair. We had the conversation. Harry Van Sant was here. We had a $600,000 surplus at that time. Didn't know what to do with it. There you go.
Well, good evening. You have a big surplus this time, thanks to COVID. Our last distribution was in 2019, so we're talking 3 years later. And as you see in the memo that I sent, we're looking at distributing $1,375,000 5 ways, with each, the 4 libraries and then the Kent County Library receiving $275,000 each. The biggest creation of the surplus will be that reciprocal borrowing has dropped immensely. Back in 2006 was its highest point at 259,310 books. And in 2022, we had 81,748 books. Our lowest year was 2021, which was the year that was, and this is a fiscal year, that was mostly affected by COVID. And it was 27,489. So that's just a few numbers to throw out there to state what created the huge residual.
Yeah. Thank you. So, Dr. Welliver, do you attribute anything else to the drop in book?
Well, you also have to consider that libraries have been moving more and more to virtual materials, ebooks, the audio books, streaming video, and those items don't get counted when we do reciprocal borrowing. Although they do balance circulation figures, it's not reflected in the tool that we use, because actually the collection is overseen by the Delaware Division of Libraries, the state library, which isn't included in getting recompense through this tool of reciprocal borrowing.
But is there any effort that's handled by the municipal or the county library for the e-collection? Any effort, administrative effort at all?
We can make suggestions, and we also do contribute to the fund that they use, purchase for the entire state, not just for Kent County. So beyond that, you know, usually if you ask it and it's available and they can get it, they buy it. had counties, not ours, launch beta programs, which is how we ended up with Hoopla. And no, you don't get a lot of say in some ways, not as much say as we do for the school stuff.
So when you say we contribute, do we contribute monetarily or just advice on what types of, what material we want them to purchase for the e-collection?
We have contributed money to it, consistent, or at least, what, years? About 10 years. And that figure goes up, incrementally. Every year, I average it out over about $5,000 to $6,000 a year.
But that doesn't come out of reciprocal borrowing?
Pardon me?
Could that come out of reciprocal borrowing?
I don't see how they would be able to track it. Not the virtual.
Right.
I don't think that would work for. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
The agreements would need to change too. There's very specific language that
Right.
monitors the agreements right now.
I just didn't, I mean, there have to be county residents who are also taking advantage of the e-collection, which they may live in unincorporated areas because of the remoteness away from a library, which is exactly why we put reciprocal borrowing in place in the first place. I mean, it's not much money, but I mean, to me, it's minimal for the benefit of the e-collection. Any other questions? Commissioner Buxton.
And I won't be here to decide this, but I have argued it many times. We have a tax collected for the purpose of a specific reciprocal borrowing, we'll call it that. And we routinely collect too much, which means the tax is too high. So you got two options. We either cut the tax or go back and rework the language to enable you to utilize the funds in a different manner. So my question is, where was it the Levy Court or was it the General Assembly that created the reciprocal language that made the tax reciprocal borrowing related?
It was the Levy Court, wasn't it, Mike?
So the Levy Court has the ability to maintain the current tax, but then it's antiquated right now. We need to adjust it, right? It's not designed to create a $1.3 million reservoir that we just whimsically give out. Can we adjust, change, modify to better reflect how to get the money out? I don't know if I'm saying that right, but currently what we're doing right now isn't working. I mean, it's working. We can give the money out, but it really isn't the way it was designed to be. Is that a Levy Court fix if they chose to do so?
It would be a Levy Court fix. I personally don't think go as far as say it's not used in the intent, because it is given back to the library. So I just want to make sure everybody always hears that. It's a library tax that only goes to libraries. So
There, but we're not giving it back for the express purpose of refunding reciprocal borrowing costs. We have to agree that's accurate. So I'm saying that you should probably change some of the language. We can better allocate it on an annual basis, right? We don't have to decide that tonight. All right, so let's move on. But I would suggest that makes sense, because right now it just seems like we had this discussion every 3 years. Doesn't make sense to me. But I'm in favor of this, so.
Any other questions for our staff? Commissioner Masson.
Just one comment on the Smyrna Library, because most likely in April or May, we're going to be breaking ground for the new Duck Creek Regional Library. Just a word of caution here. In the past, the checks have been made out to the Duck Creek Regional Library. Since Smyrna Library is going to go phase out, I have an agreement with Andrew Haynes, who's the town manager, that whatever money Duck Creek Regional Library gets, which based on this would be $275, that we would split that with the current Smyrna Library. So Smyrna Library, currently operating, would get money, as well as the new Duck Creek Regional Library.
Susan, does that agreement impact us at all? I mean, if we cut a check to the Duck Creek Library and they have an agreement with Smyrna Library to give them half, to just turn right around and cut half a check to them?
Well, we cut the check to the Smyrna Library, and
That's
then
what I
they give
thought.
them the half.
They give them the
We
half.
have to do it that way.
Yeah, we don't give it to Duck Creek because they're not an official library yet. So we give it to the Smyrna Public Library, and Smyrna Public Library has to have an agreement with you to give half to Duck Creek.
Okay, so depending upon when the checks will be cut, then I'll follow up with Andrew because he's leaving shortly.
Right.
I'll handle that one, Susan.
Any other questions? Move this forward to the ensuing business meeting. I see 4. Mr. Buxton, 5, 6. Commissioner Hall?
In favor.
Thank you. Dr. Welliver, I'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Yep. Next, Browns Branch irrigation bid results and awards. Mr. Shepherd.
So,
Thanks, Susan. Thanks, Dr. Welliver.
Staff has been working through a bid for irrigation services to be installed at Browns Branch County Park. We did find out some things early on in the process where we probably increased the scope well beyond our budgeted means. We then rebid it out with a kind of a scope that included alternates in order for us to kind of do the menu style of choosing what worked within our budget framework. So we did get 3 bids back. You see the bid quotation summary in your packet. The low bid is not the one that we're choosing, and we are not choosing the low bid because they did not submit required submittals and design for the installation. This is a costly installation, so that was significant enough for us to eliminate them from consideration and move to bidder number 2, which on the sheet is Delaware Landscaping, JT Snow Removal, doing business as Delaware Landscaping. They provided us with the quote for all bids, the base bid, alternate 1, and alternate 2. And if you see up here on the map that I was provided you, the base bid included the 3 softball fields in the complex that are there. Bid alternate number 1 included a multi-purpose field, which is essentially part of that immediate area. Bid alternate 2 was 2 multi-purpose fields kind of at the southeastern corner there of the park, which is a little bit further away from the main line that's already there. All those bids together did come in over our budgeted amount. We looked at base bid and bid alternate 1 as really, an opportunity to do a lot of good in that area. It is slightly over budget, so we're going to have to find a little bit extra money. That's also in the motion in order to pay for it. The budget was $160,000. That was $80,000 of Kent County money and $80,000 of ORPT, which is the Outdoor Recreation Parks and Trails Fund through DENREC, that we were successfully able to get a couple years back. So we're hoping that we can award this bid, move forward with this installation, hopefully this fall, so that next spring we'll be ready to go and have a good full summer of activity on those fields that don't tear it up. And the purpose, another reason why we're doing irrigation, underground irrigation here, is that we've been using old style reel, and reel is R-E-E-L, irrigation that is very labor intensive in order to put it out, get it in, put it back out, get it in, put it back out. So it's kind of like one of those John Deere tractor things that you get for your lawn, just much bigger. So this will allow us to be able to program it when it gets irrigated. And the sandiness of the soils down at Browns Branch really needs us to have irrigation on it. So really good project. We got grant money. We hope you support it with offering or awarding this bid here tonight. Take any questions you have.
Thanks, Mr. Shepherd. So the $4,000 from Park Reserves contingency, isn't that funds that is funded through payment in lieu of?
I don't know that that's necessarily involved there. The way it was explained to me is that whenever we do a project, a capital project, if there's reserves, for example, when we did the bathroom project at Big Oak, we did not expend all the funds in that particular budget. So those monies are just kind of left over, and then that's where these reserves come from. That's how it was explained to me.
Cool, thanks. Any other questions for Mr. Shepherd? Move this forward to the ensuing business meeting. See 6 hands here. Commissioner Hall?
In favor.
Thank you. 7 in favor. Many public comments on either of these 2 subjects. Any public comments? Anybody online, Mark?
I see no hands raised online, Mr. Chairman.
Sir, back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. At this time, we'll reconvene the business meeting. There is no old business. New business, potential action items from the committee meetings previously, and the Delaware Bay Beach Association, Commissioner Angel, they've been waiting patiently. So let's take care of them.
Just like a storm, they're still here. Mr. Buxton, please, I'd like for you to make the motion.
Hey, Commissioner Angel. A motion to authorize the establishment of a formal partnership agreement with the Delaware Bay Beach Association, hereinafter referred to as BBA, in conjunction with Sussex County, Delaware, the details of which shall be presented to Levy Court at a future date for consideration. And I further move to award a grant to BBA in an amount not to exceed $30,000 for the expressed and limited purpose of assisting with the cost of professional consulting services, with such funds to be dispersed on a monthly basis upon receipt and verification by the county of invoices received from BBA for this purpose, with the source of funds being the FY 2023 General Fund contingency.
Second the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Buxton, second by Commissioner Angel. Is there any questions on that motion? I don't see any. Can we have roll call on the motion, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Absolutely.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you, folks. Look forward to good things happening. All right, item number 2, Mr. Angel.
Ezra Hardware software upgrade. Any questions? I move to approve Avante Data Products Corporation for the hardware portion of the Ezra hardware software upgrade in the total amount of $63,510. The funding source is the fiscal year 2022, fiscal year 2023 capital project fund, Ezra hardware software upgrade.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Angel, second by Commissioner Maston. Any questions on that motion? I don't see or hear any. Can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. The motion has passed. Number 3, Commissioner Angel.
Thank you. Proposed policy amendment P22-02, amending Section 27-1, Kent County Metal. Any further questions? I move to approve proposed policy amendment P2202, amending 27-1, Kent County Metal as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Motion made by Commissioner Angel, second by Commissioner Maston. It's already called for any questions. Do we have any questions? I don't see or hear any. Can we have a motion or a roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
No.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
No, I think that doing this, we're going to dilute the importance of getting a medal from Kent County Levy Court.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes, and I think that the Levy Court Commissioners all have the option of voting against something when it comes before Levy Court, so yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 5 yeas, 2 nay.
Thank you. Roll call reveals Policy Amendment P22-02 has been approved by Levy Court. Next item on agenda, Commissioner Buxton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Levy Court approve the aforementioned housing rehabilitation change order number 2 for housing rehabilitation contract number 19-29.
Second?
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Buxton, second by Commissioner Maston. Do we have any questions on this motion? I don't see or hear any. Can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Mr. Pettit-Maj, you said we skipped over that one?
Yeah, we have an item, well, if we're done with the rehab project, we can continue with the planning service, but we do need to go back to the Finance Committee and vote on the request from the Smyrna Opera House.
I believe it's on the next page under Mrs. Maston.
Okay, not on mine. Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay. So we need to vote on the motion for the housing rehabilitation, I think. Or have we already done that? We did that?
Yes, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Okay. Roll call reveals the housing rehab project has been approved. And the next item, Commissioner Buxton, you have an introduction.
Thank you, sir. Introduction of ordinance LC 22-16. Community solar definition. An ordinance to amend the Kent County Code Volume 2, Chapter 205 zoning as amended by revising Article 2 definitions, 205-6 definitions to delete the reference to regulation by the Public Service Commission in the definition of community energy generating facility, and add the maximum size of 50 acres for public hearing on Tuesday, September 27, 2022 at 7 p.m.
Thank you for the introduction. Over to the next page, Commissioner Sweeney.
Thanks,
you have,
sir.
2.
Reciprocal borrowing fund balance and library tax. I move to approve the distribution of $275,000 each to the 4 municipal libraries, Dover, Smyrna, Harrington, and Milford, and to the Kent County Public Library in the total of $1.375 million for the express and limited purpose of providing additional financial resources, support, and assistance for library service in Kent County.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Sweeney, second by Commissioner Buxton. Do we have any questions on that motion? I don't see or hear any. Can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Roll call reveals the motion has passed. Next item.
Thank you, sir. Browns Branch Irrigation Bid Award. I move to award Delaware Landscaping the bid for providing irrigation to Browns Branch County Park in the amount of $164,000 for 3 softball fields and 1 multi-purpose field, with the funding sources of $80,000 from Kent County Capital Funds, $80,000 from the ORPT grant funds, and $4,000 of Park Reserves contingency, and further authorize the President of Levy Court to sign a contract for such services.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Sweeney, second by Commissioner Howell. Any questions on the motion? I don't see or hear anything. Can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Roll call reveals the motion to pass. Next item, Commissioner Masson. This came about, the Smyrna Opera House renovations. My wife and I have taken the opportunity over the past year to attend several events there at the Smyrna Opera House. And I would encourage all of my fellow commissioners to go up there and see what they have to offer. And I think you'll be impressed. I think the only problem they have, it's a great venue. I guess they just wish it was bigger, but because I'm sure they would fill it. But it's a great venue, and Brian Hill approached me at one of our visits there and asked that we consider giving them a contribution in order to make the necessary improvements and get ready for their anniversary. So again, if I can't express upon you enough to take the advantage or take the opportunity to go up there and see what they have to offer. It's good venue. So, Mrs. Maston.
I move to approve a grant to the Smyrna Opera House in the amount of $8,000 as a contribution toward a planned capital improvement project to renovate the theater in preparation for the 20th anniversary celebration of the Opera House on March 2023, with the source of funding being the Kent County Community Projects Contribution Fund established in Kent County Policy Number 30.
Second motion.
Thank you. Thank you. Motion by Mr. Masson, second by Commissioner Angel. Any questions? Seeing none, can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Roll call reveals the request for $8,000 to Smyrna Opera House renovations has been approved. Moving on to other business. Any need for Chris?
Yes.
All right. Item number 1 there, Mr. Angel.
Move to go in executive session immediately following the business meeting for preliminary discussion on site acquisition for publicly funded capital improvement, legal strategy session regarding collective bargaining, or pending or potential litigation and personal matters pursuant to 29 Del Code 10004, B2, 4, and 9.
That is a motion. Need a second?
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Can we have roll call, please, on?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Motion passed. We do have a executive session immediately following this. Information items. Next Levy Court meeting is next week, Tuesday, August 16, 2022 at 7 p.m. And we mention that because we do have an abbreviated summer schedule and we don't meet every Tuesday during the summer. Any other informational items? Mr. Pettermosh.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to remind commissioners that Senator Carper will be visiting the Westover EMS station, and I know some of you have signed up to be there, so just a reminder that that event is taking place at 10 o'clock tomorrow. Correct? I'm seeing, I'm looking across the way, I saw a puzzled look. 9:30.
Yes, I also had it as 9:30.
9:30. Yeah, well, yeah.
As much as he's helped you,
affection in my heart, you know.
Okay, any other informational items? Commissioner Angel.
Yes, thank you. And Mr. Pettimaj, we have a City of Dover liaison meeting finally set for September 15th, and we need
Correct.
some items for that from
Correct.
us that are part of that committee.
Yes.
When do you need that by?
Anytime.
Okay.
You're ready, but we're going to finalize an agenda by the end of the month.
Okay. And then, ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you my report on the conference in Denver at the DAC meeting. It was a meeting of proportion. That's all I can say. Mr. Howell, is that correct?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Maston and I last night met with Ammon 64 up in Clayton and presented them their ARPA check, and they were extremely delighted with the amount that we gave them over what they requested. So glad we went, glad we presented it to them. They were very, very appreciative. Any other informational items? Okay. Public comments. Any public comments? Seeing
No hands
none,
raised
hearing
for public
none.
comment.
Commissioner comments. No commissioner comments. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
A second to adjourn, Commissioner Buxton. All those in favor, aye? We are adjourned.